Well, good morning, everybody. Hopefully, you've all had a good week. We're going to be in Nehemiah 6 today, and I'm going to be talking about Operation Intimidation. That was intimidation. That's right. So, we've seen Nehemiah leading his project of rebuilding Jerusalem's walls in spite of the opposition that he's experienced, both subtle and overt. So, as the walls were nearing completion, his threatening forces were again assailing him as the leader. This time, however, the attacks were more insidious than before, and they attempted to intimidate Nehemiah through several frightening plots. But Nehemiah had developed God-given discernment, and thankfully none of those plans succeeded. And the wall, we did see, get to come to completion. So, we're going to see a well-timed attack. So we are in the spot where the ancient equivalent of a ribbon cutting was in sight. There was a feeling of euphoria coming over the people because of them getting to the finish line on this goal. And that was the time that we see the enemies really start to ramp up and begin their deceitful attacks on Nehemiah personally. So they waited for their time when they thought the attacks would be least expected. The physical defense of Jerusalem was at the point of completion, but Nehemiah's personal defenses here we're going to see be attacked. And I think that a lot of times leaders are often more susceptible to attack when intoxicated with success. So I have up here 1 Corinthians 10:12. It says, "Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall." It's not often the person who's almost fallen that's vulnerable. It's the person who thinks that they'll never fail. That feeling of invulnerability, most of the time we see that in teenagers, I think, is pretty prevalent. Boys in particular think that they are impervious to injury. So, that certainly makes leaders more susceptible to being to failing. So in Scripture, we have a number of failures demonstrated. So we look at David. When did Bathsheba cross the gaze of David? It was when he had never known defeat in battle. From the time he took the kingdom until he fell with Bathsheba, he had never known defeat, politically, militarily, or personally, once he took over. When did Jonah fall into self-pity? It was after he was able to make it to Nineveh and save a bunch of people, having a great revival. And after that, he sat and he just wanted God to curse his head and die. When did Joseph receive temptation from Potiphar's wife? It was when he was promoted into a leadership position in that household and had free run of the house. So all these times, these leaders have success, and that's when their integrity is really tested. So have you ever found yourself facing a low tide or discouragement after a tremendous or mountaintop experience? I know it's there are times where we've done things with our kids, and kids are always an easy one to come back to. You finally achieve something, or they get something that they've been wanting for so long, whether it's a toy or it's a game or it's an activity, and then afterwards they're disappointed by them not feeling better about it. And oftentimes that anticipation leading up to, or the work getting up to that point, is more fun than the actual prize itself. And I think those are the times where we are susceptible to that drop, that discouragement. So, got a question up here. So in your own words, define discernment. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So understanding, wisdom. Any other thoughts on discernment? So there, I think, are a lot of examples where people lack discernment in the ability to make the right decision in a tough situation. So as we go through chapter 6 this week, we're going to see Nehemiah's rock-solid integrity and how he was able to keep the enemies of Israel at bay time and time again. So there's going to be 4 attempts to set traps for Nehemiah that we'll read through. And in all 4 cases, Nehemiah's wise, God-given discernment delivered him, and his perseverance sustained him through those. So Merriam-Webster defines discernment as the quality of being able to comprehend what is obscure, skill in discerning, an act of perceiving or discerning something. In simpler terms, it's often described as wisdom or the ability to judge wisely between things. It involves accurately evaluating ourselves, people, and situations to perceive what is true and essential. So another way to think about it is a power to see what is not evident to the average mind. Discernment stresses accuracy, as in reading character or motives. So based on that definition or those definitions and kind of the pieces that we brought up, how would you rate your own level of discernment? Feel like that's a strength for you? Feel like that's something we could do better on? That's a tough one. Yeah. It's, I think experience helps a lot with that. You get to see your failures and your bad decisions and how they impact you and how you could have done better. A lot of times that will help influence having better discernment in the future. So. Mm-hmm. No. The external facade doesn't always indicate the foundation, whether it's good or bad. And so it can be deceiving at times. And that's where I think it takes discernment to decide, you know, just because something's pretty doesn't mean that that's going to be the best thing, or just because something's less attractive doesn't mean that that's not the best path forward, that you are working to save souls as opposed to investing your time in something else. All right, we're going to read Nehemiah 6, 1 through 4. Now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there were no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, "Come, let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono." But they intended to do me harm, and I sent messengers to them, saying, "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you?" And they sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. So, as we read this, we start to see how Nehemiah was getting attacked by his enemies. So, they employed a subtle strategy. So, he was at the point of planning the dedication service for the completed wall when that attack came. The enemy's goal never stopped, in that they wanted to discontinue the work on the wall and use discouragement of Nehemiah and his men to do it. So God permitted these tests to strengthen his servant. He doesn't necessarily desire to soften us with ease and irresponsible luxury. That's unrealistic, and that's penthouse living. Doesn't mean that we aren't allowed to enjoy that kind of living at times. And I like the quote from C.S. Lewis when he put it this way: of Christianity has not been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and not tried. And so I think that helps to provide a little bit of perspective there too. So many people will see the demands of a Christian life today and say, "You can have it. I'd rather go my own way." But Nehemiah didn't do that. He saw what needed to be done, and he did it. So as a result of going God's way, he suffered an attack, multiple attacks, that came as a personal request. The attack on the surface seemed harmless, even like something he ought to do, but he didn't do it. He was able to discern from his enemy's treachery, sensing danger. So one sign of a mature leader is to say no. Nehemiah sensed the cold heart, the bad intention behind the request, and he kept himself free of a trap. And he kept saying no as well, 4 times in fact. So the servant of God is never meant to be a puppet of man. In other words, a commitment to leadership ministry doesn't automatically imply an obligation to please people. A wise, discerning leader must be strong enough to say no to some, perhaps most, requests of his or her time and attention, sometimes even without an explanation. For most people pleasers or overachievers, saying no is really hard. But following Nehemiah's example and saying no repeatedly can be excruciating. Whenever possible, leaders should establish a policy of trying to take time to weigh the decision before saying yes. Have you guys ever experienced the times when you have somebody persistently coming to ask you for something that you don't want to do, you know is probably not the best thing, but they just keep asking again and again, whether it's your kid, they're very good at that, whether that's somebody at work, whether that's a friend, something, and is it hard to say no? Most of the time I know I want to say yes. That's tough. So why do you think people in leadership often have a hard time saying no? You don't want to be the bad guy. You don't want to feel like you're not going to be liked anymore. Absolutely. I see those a lot. Any other thoughts? Yeah. I've said repeatedly over the years that people in leadership positions tend to have control issues. Guilty as well here. I understand that. Sometimes you know that if you do the job, it's going to be done the way that you expect it to be done. You know you can fully execute it. But yeah, oftentimes people want to put off things onto their leader because either they're the most capable or they've not been empowered to take something on. So, yeah. Yeah. Meetings to talk about the meeting, or the work repeatedly really hinders the progress. So what are some negative consequences of saying yes too often? You do get taken for granted. Yeah. 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 It's, yeah. Yeah. So, Brent, back to your comment, it makes me think of a buffet. Like, I don't really ever go to buffets because I feel like you get a lot of mediocre food, but you just get a lot of it. Like, it's not really good for me because I'm going to go and eat the most that I possibly can because I'm going to get my money's worth out of that buffet. But it's not great food. It's not anything I'm terribly okay. It's been a long time since I've been to an Indian buffet. I might also argue pizza. Like, Pizza Hut used to have a buffet. I could go there in college and get like more than a whole pizza myself for less than for about $5 with the water. So it was great. But you dilute yourself and your time and your efforts and your energy to where it's not as effective, or you're not enabled to actually complete work to fruition at all, which I think are also. Sure. That makes me think, I work in nursing homes. I'm an administrator. I've been in various levels of leadership and non-leadership positions within the industry. And there are some companies that are for-profit that's their drive. Their goal is to make as much money as possible. And heads in the bed are one of the things, to keep facilities afloat. And so even if you don't have great staffing, the things are bad that day, you have a variety of stuff going on, there's people available to discharge from the hospital that want to come to your facility. You might get 6 to 9 admissions in a day. That's going to tax your nursing staff more than what they can safely do, creating a liability, creating care issues. And so that's where there are some companies, and this particular one it makes me think of, you're diluting yourself. You're saying yes too often, and you should be saying no, because it can have dire consequences for the people involved. So in your own experience, how does discernment play a role in determining when to say yes and when to say no? Sure. Understanding when you can say no, I think, is an important thing. The CEO comes to you and says, you need to do this. Okay, I'll do it, you know. I think one of the results of saying yes too often is that you build up sometimes too much work, too many deliverables on any set period of time, and you get lost in the weeds. As leaders, you need to be able to look at what is our main focus, what is our objective? Is what we're doing helping to further what our mission is, what our objective is, what our goals are? If it's not and it's distracting us from that, is that something we really need to get involved in? Or is that something I personally need to be doing, or can that be farmed out somewhere else? Sure. It's a good way to put that. Abilities and consequences. So, yeah, I like that. Yeah. It does make it difficult. When everything is an emergency, you know, nothing is an emergency at that point. So, I mean, it makes it hard, so. Sure. Yeah. The experience piece is so valuable in those. But yeah, good points, Brent. All right, we're going to read verses 5 through 9. In the same way, Sanballat, for the 5th time, sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, "It is reported among the nations, and Geshem also says it, that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become their king. And you have also set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, 'There is a king in Judah.' And now the king will hear of these reports. So now come, and let us take counsel together." Then I sent him, saying, "No such things as you say have been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind." For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking, "Their hands will drop from the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands." So here we're seeing the rumor mill get running. So the 4 previous attempts that came were all closed letters. They were private. They were directly to Nehemiah, disguised as a diplomatic invitation. But now we see it moving into more of the propaganda that's getting out there in the form of an open letter. So it came with a messenger this time that opened it and read it aloud for all to hear. So you can notice the intimidating remarks in that letter. It's reported among the nations. Geshem also says it, that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you're building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become king. You've also set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, there's a king in Judah. And now the king will hear of these reports. So now come, let us take counsel together and bring this back. So the widely publicized letter alleged that Nehemiah intended to revolt, set himself up as king. And what this all is rumor. One characteristic of rumor is that the source is really never quoted. It's just, I've heard this, people are saying this, it's coming from, here and there. Another characteristic is that rumors are laden with exaggeration and inaccuracy. They quickly spread from one person to the next. Everybody played the game telephone. It's always like the one that sticks out. I think everybody's played that in elementary school or wherever. And it's amazing how quickly a message gets distorted going from one person to another in that short period of time. Unfortunately, people are often quick to believe negative messages and believe the worst about other people. So rumors lead to personal hurt and misunderstanding, and Nehemiah was hurt by this. And we see him impaled by the horns of a dilemma. So if he refused to go to Ono, it would be tantamount to him admitting his guilt. But if he went, he'd be walking into a trap. So he was in a tough spot here. And we see here that speech messages are not doing any favors here. And I think a lot of times one of the biggest enemies of disunity or of unity in the church is the tongue. It's not TV, it's not drugs, it's not drink, it's not bad programming in the church. It's what's said. Yeah. Yeah. It's so unfortunate, but it absolutely is. And there's a lot of verses that talk about the tongue. And I think that regardless of how well a leader may manage their people, their projects, the unseen sin of gossip can eat away at any person's credibility. Just as we wouldn't put up with murder in the workplace, so as leaders, we must shield ourselves and our people against the character assassination that comes with gossip. It's so damaging to what we try to do. So we know that God does not like gossip. That's evidenced in a number of scriptures. So I pulled a few passages out that speak on the topic. So in Proverbs 6:16 through 19, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. Romans 1:29, they were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips. I gotta say, that's not the list of things that I'd want to be included in there. 2 Corinthians 12:20, for I fear that perhaps when I come, I may find you not as I wish, and that you may find me not as you wish, that perhaps there may be quarreling, jealousy, anger, hostility, slander, gossip, conceit, and disorder. Again, it's within that context of a lot of different things that we see are so detrimental. So how do we deal with gossip? I think that's one of the things we have to figure out, and Nehemiah's response, I think, will provide some guidance for us. So, first and second responses we can see in verse 8. Then I sent to him, saying, no such things as you say have been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind. So first we see that he calmly denied the charge. Like, that's made up. And second, he put the blame back where it belonged. And he called him out, said, you're making that up out of your own mind. And thirdly, he took his hurt to God. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop them from the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. He took it and he turned it over to where it needed to be. So what should our response be when we are confronted with gossip? I think oftentimes a direct confrontation can handle the situation well. So if you are here, you're the person receiving gossip about somebody, and you gently rebuke the person bringing it to you, I think it's going to send a pretty powerful message to that person and shut that down. I think we deal with gossip in personal lives, we deal with it at work, it happens in the church, all those areas, and it's a major problem. And I know I've talked about it with different bosses in the past as well. And there was one facility that my current boss is at that there was a CEO of the group that had a zero tolerance policy on gossip, and it got to the point where everybody policed each other. So the new person would come in and they'd want to start to engage with, like, nope, don't do that, you're going to get fired. I'm not going to be part of this. And it helped to tamp all that down. But when the top leader within that organization set the tone and set the expectation, it had major outcomes, positive. Was your hand raised? Oh, okay. So those who spread rumors have lost sight of the proper setting to share information. I think it's helpful to ask, will this benefit the person who hears me? Or better than that, can he do anything about it? Or is this just going to be another pouring of useless hearsay into someone else's ears? When you give unverified information to people who are critical and negative, knowing they can't do anything about the situation anyway, that's an unwise move. When you go to an individual who can do something about the relevant information in a spirit of love, that's constructive criticism. So not every critic is an enemy of faith, nor is every person who criticizes doing it with malintent. However, I don't believe that the term critic fully applies to gossip. So a person who's genuinely interested in the truth uses their tongue to secure and maintain the truth. So what should be done then when we have disagreements that need to be expressed? We should take them to the leaders who can do something about them, and those who will really listen, evaluate, and respond to what we have to say. I think this verse that I have up here even covers proper criticism to the right person. So our words are supposed to edify and to build up. So Ephesians 29 is, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. I think there's a lot of scriptures that speak to how we should conduct ourselves. Yeah. It's hard to root out if you don't address it, but it takes a hold. And I mean, we saw in the scriptures a couple slides ago where gossip is listed within a bunch of different other sins. We know that God hates it, so.
Lonnie Davis used to say, former preacher,
Yeah.
He had a point about that, talking about Bible. If I am tempted to reveal a tale someone to me has told about another, let it pass before I speak 3 gates of gold, 3 narrow gates. First, is it true? Second, is it needful? In my mind, give 3 points. And the third is the last gate, and the narrowest of all. Is it kind? And if to reach my lips at last, it passes through these 3 gates, then and only then may I tell the tale, for fear of the result a speech may be. Is it true? Is it needful? Is it kind? Say yes to all of those. Maybe mistake to repeat it. Is that you need to, are you part of the solution or are you part of the problem? Not, it's just fascinating.
Yeah. Good points. I like that. I don't think I'd heard that poem before, so. Yeah, thanks. Brent? They fill in the details. Yeah. Good points. All right, so I'm going to move on to verses 10 through 14. Now, when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of Mehetabel, who was confined to his home, he said, "Let us meet together in the house of God, within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They are coming to kill you by night." But I said, "Should such a man as I run away? And what man such as I could go into the temple and live? I will not go in." And I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me, because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin, and so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, O my God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. So in this passage, we're able to observe the enemy's next attack. It's perhaps one of the most ingenious ones they had. So they employed a religious-sounding yet intimidating warning: run for your life. The new message was telling Nehemiah that his enemies were coming in the middle of the night, and they're going to come get you. So let's go ahead and meet in the temple while we pray together. It was a very pious approach. However, Nehemiah's discernment enabled him to see the enemy's snare camouflaged beneath the false piety. He recognized the attack as the deceitful trap it was, and then he wisely turned his anger over to the Lord. So again, we see Nehemiah not yield to the attempts to be intimidated by his enemies. And I think one of the things that I can see here is that being intimidated is not reproachful, but I think yielding to the intimidation and giving in can produce sin. So when we do that, it can put us in bad situations, and that's what his enemies were trying to do here, to get him to go in and do something that would besmirch his character. So if we look at verse 13 in here, if he would have given in, the gossips would have been able to really get that rumor mill going back again. Like, do you know who Nehemiah was spending time with these days? Every night they're up at the temple together, and they can really talk about that. So if he would have done that, the ultimate goal and his mission would have suffered. 15 through 19. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month, Elul, in 52 days. And when all our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. Moreover, in those days the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and Tobiah's letters came to them. For many in Judah were bound by oath to him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Era, and his son Jehohanan, and taken the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, as his wife. They spoke of his good deeds in my presence and reported my words to him. And Tobiah sent letters to make me afraid. So here we see the walls finally finished. The schemes of Sanballat and Tobiah were thwarted. But before the celebrations began, more attacks continued to come. So, in leadership positions, people get all kinds of correspondence. Much of it is critical in nature. You get rude emails or text messages. You get nasty notes or belligerent voicemails that might get left on your phone, all of which can demoralize or intimidate leaders who may already be under a barrage of personal attacks. So if you've experienced something similar, I think you can understand how one mean-spirited comment can trump all the glowing praises that may have preceded it. And I think as leaders, you have to have the discernment to be able to weed out the comments designed to discourage us and focus on the legitimate concerns that have a need of real attention. And that's so hard to do at times. I think those negative comments really, they just stick with you, more so than all the positive things that you get. So we see here how Nehemiah overcame the test of deception, gossip, and intimidation through his God-given experience, sharpened discernment. With tenacious determination, he was able to navigate his project to completion. We too need discernment to persevere through the inevitable challenge in our own realms of leadership. I included up there 1 John 4:4. For he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. I think that's something that, going back to, so many times over and over again, we've seen Nehemiah turn his anger, his troubles, over to the Lord, and he lets him handle it. Knowing that we are not alone in this world makes a big difference in how our leadership develops. We are pretty much at the end of class, and I have a few questions I'm just going to run through. So, besides the knowledge of God's word, what is necessary for developing discernment? I have a hint up there of Hebrews 5:14, which I'll put up here for you too. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good from evil. So, you get better at it. You can see the people who have a lot more experience and how they handle things compared to those who are brand new. Experience really is so valuable. And you learn from your mistakes, but you can also look to others to help you develop that. So, what must you do to develop this kind of discernment in your life? If you create problems, you give yourself an opportunity to, to grow and get that experience. Yeah, that's right. Any other thoughts? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
This is probably been said, I didn't make that in here, but, experience, obviously, there's nothing better than experience. But
Yeah. That's a great segue into next week's lesson. We're actually going to be talking about pausing and thinking, and how important that is. Yeah. Yep. And last question I have up there is, if your discernment skills are still developing, you need to gather trusted support to complement you in this area. So as you think about those close to you in life, who seems to have that extra measure of discernment? And how do they exhibit discernment in their lives? And I think always looking for the examples of people around you, people close to you, makes a big difference in that. So that's all I got for today. Any other thoughts or questions?
Your thought a moment ago, you said about getting a negative comment, and it really stuck with you. You need to be open with criticism.
We do.
Well, what if that person had put that a different way? What if they had couched it in a way, talked about some positives that you're doing, and said, maybe you think about this a different way, and then with some positive. It might still stick in your mind, but it would sit there with a sweeter flavor to it. I think we all have that responsibility to criticize at the time.
We do. The delivery of a message is so important into how it's received. I know in work life, written communication is used a lot, and it's really hard to convey your tone and message through an email, through a text. Even in personal life, when text is used pretty frequently, you can send something off and you're like, go back later and reread it and be like, that seems a little cold, or that seems a little harsh, as opposed to like, I'm sitting here thinking, great, I sent it off and it seemed, I got no issue with how that would read. Like, maybe I missed the mark on that. But that's where understanding your message delivery, coming at it from a place of good intention that they can feel from you, highlighting some of their positives. My director of nursing puts it in a way of letting somebody, when you have to reprimand them, walk away with their head still held high. Like, you don't want them to go beat down, because they're not gonna be able to rally and grow from it. They're just gonna get demoralized. So I think it's important skill. So thanks, Ron. All right, class dismissed. You're welcome. Audio is one of those words that, like, I always have to sit and think about for a second of the best way to.
It's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I almost asked, but like everybody else probably knows what it means.
I remember going on this in not like a college class, like a long time ago, back in Charlottesville, and there was a debate on audios and like the way it comes. So basically, it's trial looks down on others.
Oh, okay. Like, egotistical.
Yeah.
Type. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. All right. Thanks.
You're
I was
welcome.
just
No.
like, what does that mean? All right. I enjoy your class, so
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
What were you going to say?
There are some terms that like we use in the Bible, like interesting, that are not everyday words, and so like you have to think about, is this how to convey what I'm actually trying to say? Or, like,
Am I using this word right? Yeah.
all the verses that I have that I've been putting up in the English, the ESV, the English Standard Version, but a lot of times I'll do like a parallel,
I'll do that too, but unfortunately, it's like the new King James, as opposed to like I don't know, like international.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Because some of them are more like a thought for thought translation as opposed to like word translation.
Yes.
You know, and that. Hi, Jude. Love you, buddy. I don't know if they'll always. He won't always come give me hugs, but I'll take it now.
They
You
won't.
know.
They won't.
No,
They roll your eyes.
they do.
Like today, I was like, Julian, I'm going to Sunday school today, so I need you to be ready. He's like, oh. I mean, I just called him. He's upstairs. I just called him, and I was like, all right, never mind. And so then I peeked in on him just to see if he got out of bed. He didn't. I was like, all right, just leave it there. It's okay. Anyway, I do enjoy your lessons, Justin. I mean, I don't know why I always want to call you Justin. I'm sorry, Tyler. And I have a Tyler in my life, so I don't know why. You know. Anyway.